I'm Donny Deutsch.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to the staff members leaving Donald Trump's campaign, are you sick of winning already? On our show tonight, a Veep Stakes swing dance, Supreme Court encore, and a special performance by Donny Deutsch and the With All Due Respect Reflectones. But first, did Attorney General Loretta Lynch change keys, or was she singing off-pitch to begin with? The New York Times published a headline this morning on their website indicating that the AG, acknowledging the poor optics of her private meeting with Bill Clinton earlier this week, will accept whatever recommendation prosecutors and FBI investigators make about any chance of indictments in the probe of Hillary Clinton's private email server. The story in the Times suggested that Lynch would essentially remove herself from the case. That set off a firestorm on morning TV news. I was on morning TV news talking about this story, and I got contacted by a Justice Department official who suggested that the Times story was incorrect in at least one critical respect. This official said that Lynch would be reserving the right to overrule what the Justice Department prosecutors and FBI recommended. I was told, though, that the probability of that happening was, according to this official, quote, very, very low.
And to make things a little more confusing, Lynch appeared this morning on stage at the Aspen Ideas Festival in Colorado, where she expressed some regret about her tarmac chat with the former president, but she also seemed to send mixed messages about her exact role in the ongoing investigation. Here's Lynch suggesting to the Washington Post's Jonathan Capehart that this investigation is like any other case and that her role has, indeed, in fact, not changed.
As I've always indicated, the matter is being handled by career agents and investigators with the Department of Justice. They've had it since the beginning, and they are acting independently. They follow the law, they follow the facts. They will make recommendations as to how to resolve what those facts lead to. The recommendations will be reviewed by career supervisors in the Department of Justice and in the FBI, and by the FBI director. And then, as is the common process, they present it to me, and I fully expect to accept their recommendations.
But when pressed in that conversation, Lynch muddied the water a bit more by suggesting that she would defer to prosecutors and FBI investigators.
While I don't have a role in those findings, in coming up with those findings or making those recommendations as to how to go forward, I'll be briefed on it, and I will be accepting their recommendations. I'll be informed of those findings as opposed to never reading them or never seeing them, but I will be accepting their recommendations and their plan for going forward.
Now, Mark, I was sitting next to her on morning TV, and of course the Times reported it, and basically she was laissez-faire. Then you spoke to DOJ, and they said, well, maybe there is a little wiggle room. Later in the day, no wiggle room. I'm wiggle confused. Is there any wiggle left?
The proper way for her to handle this under a normal case would be exactly what her aide told me the way she was handling it, and the way she said at times today she is, which is defer to the prosecutors, the career people in the FBI, probably do what they do, but if in her judgment as Attorney General, they made the wrong recommendation, to change it. I believe that's what she wants to do. This cover story about how this is some special plan for this case, that's standard procedure. What she's doing, I think, is caving to the pressure after the meeting with Bill Clinton to pretend and try to have it both ways and say, I'm just going to accept their recommendation.
Yeah, I think she had an out, and it's basic. Look, she clearly made a mistake. He made a mistake. But you say, look, nothing happened in that meeting. It was purely social. My role as Attorney General is I do have final say. That is my job. In the overwhelming amount of times, I will go with my people and I will not interfere. But this, like any other case, my role will not change. And a 20-minute meeting on an airplane with Bill Clinton does.
Someone gave the New York Times that story. And the Attorney General herself in this event with Jonathan Capehart, on a couple occasions, if you listen to her literally, she's acting like she's going to rubber stamp this. That's not her position. And I think the way it's being reported by some organizations is ridiculous. She's trying to have it both ways. I understand why she's doing it. But, man, it's confusing. And it only is undermining the situation. If she gets a recommendation to indict, I assume she'll let it go through. If she gets an indictment, a recommendation not to indict, I assume she'll rubber stamp that as well. But at this point, she's led people to believe that no one is in charge except the career people who are not being named. There's no accountability. It's a problem.
It is astounding that this went down. The judgment, we talked earlier this morning also, the fact that, and we're going to talk later in the show about Clinton and his brand, and he seems to be going off the rails a bit, but the fact that she was in such an easy position, even we talked about earlier, staff to say, President Clinton. It's not appropriate.
Right.
The judgment is astoundingly bad in this instance.
If he had showed up at her office and said, I want to come in for a meeting and say hi, I assume they would have said no. I think the airplane maybe confused them.
The fumes.
All right, it won't surprise you to hear that Donald J. Trump billionaire is jumping all over this latest development, the Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton story. While speaking at the Western Conservative Summit out in Denver this afternoon, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee suggested that there was more to Bill Clinton's conversation with Lynch than mere social matters.
He just happened to be at the airport at this time. Think of it. Just happened to be at the airport. You know, when I first heard the story, I said, no, you're kidding. I don't believe it. I thought somebody was joking. But it's not a joke. And I think that he really opened it up. He opened up a Pandora's box, and it shows what's going on, and it shows what's happening with our laws and with our government. You know, he's talking about golf and grandchildren. I love my grandchildren so much. But if I talk about them for more than about 9 or 10 seconds, you know, what do we... I love my grandchildren. I love that one. I love that one. I love that one. And look at the beautiful... I love these kids. After that, what are you going to say, right?
So, Donny, it's a Friday of a holiday weekend, so there's not many people around in the political world in either party to react. But at the end of this week, after the meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, after what Loretta Lynch has done, how much worse off is Hillary Clinton politically, whether there's an indictment or not?
Let me answer this two ways. First, in terms of that there are 100 some odd days left into the election. Obviously, Trump owned the day today. You know, one more day to frame her as untrustworthy, as Clinton's playing, footsie above the law. It still is not going to affect it. It's baked in. There's no news today about Hillary other than, you know what, one more time the Clintons are not trustworthy. If she's indicted, it's game over. If not, this is something we talk about. At the end of the day, people are going to still vote. What is better for my pocketbook? Who's going to make me feel safer? The same way if tomorrow Donald Trump said one more stupid Mexican comment like, oh, the Mexicans are attacking us. Obviously, it's a day for Hillary to point fingers at him. It's not changing any matter.
I think it's a little bit worse for her than you do, because if there's no indictment, and that's what's widely expected,
right.
I think both of us expect that, and most analysts do. People in the Justice Department don't expect it. The thing is undermined now, the credibility. She does not get the same kind of clean bill of health now, because people are going to say there's something messed up about it.
They would have said that anyway, though.
No,
they would have said, you know what, yes, Comey's not his own man.
But now there's something to point to that's very specific, which is the meeting. And no one's going to be able to prove. If you think there's a way to say, it plays into Trump's themes. Washington is corrupt, the Clintons are corrupt, the Obama administration's corrupt. There's now a big thing to point to. Before, what do you point to? There's now an event to point to that's tangible where they can say this thing was cooked.
I'm going to go back and say one more thing. I don't think one vote is changed either way. If you think Hillary Clinton is untrustworthy, this is one more support point in your direction. And if you give her passes and everything else,
same thing told if she's indicted.
That's a different story. Completely different. Why? Because basically that's a felony at that point. And it's a very different discussion.
Here's the thing. At a minimum, it can rev up the Republican base. And that's not nothing.
That is not nothing, but once again, I think it was just one day of lost, and beyond that, not much.
Okay.
Mark, what does the story tell us about Bill Clinton's ability to help and hurt Mrs. Clinton in this campaign?
It shows he still has enormous capacity to hurt her. He's done very well. He's raising money. He's mostly stayed below the radar. I've heard from so many Democrats baffled. Yes, the Attorney General probably should have barred him from the plane, but he's the one who went on there. It's hard to say no to a former president who wants to get on your plane to say hi. People, I mean, you can psychobabble and try to come up with an explanation. At a minimum, it shows what a lot of people around him have said for a long time. He has lost more than a step in terms of his political judgment.
I think he's lost a bunch of steps, and I think viscerally you feel it when you see him. You know, everybody is talked ad nauseum in terms of he doesn't look as strong, he looks elderly, he looks frail. He does not have that kind of mischief in his eye anymore. You know, there's something that Trump has. The very thing that you don't like about him is that, you know, you don't know what's coming next, and he's a little devilish and
he's vibrant.
Yes, that gives him testosterone. That gives him power. Right now, Clinton, it's gone from the eyes. And once again, we're seeing his behavior. And I hate to make ageist statements, but he's seeming like kind of a little bit of your wacky Uncle Bill, if you will. And right now, her surrogate is going to be Barack Obama, and it is not going to be Bill Clinton.
I'll say again what I said this morning and took some heat for it on social media. My strong view is that Bill Clinton wasn't going on there to try to influence the case.
Absolutely.
He's a social guy. You know how many times that guy's been on a tarmac in a private plane?
Yeah, who's there?
Who's there?
Coming.
Get on the plane. I mean, I'm almost certain that's what it's about.
100%.
But But it points to two things. One, we already mentioned, he's lost a step. The other is, it has been true for a long time. Like most former presidents, he doesn't travel with like David Axelrod or somebody who's going to be thinking every step of the way, what are the politics of what we're about to do? Can we eat in this non-union restaurant? You know, there's all sorts of decisions you have to make. He's under a microscope now, and you can bet that they're going to think again about every minute of his schedule, which they do every so often when they realize this guy can create a lot of negative news if he does the wrong thing.
But with or without the right aid, the greatest politician theoretically of the last 30 or 40 years, and a guy who's gone through his own legal battles, really should have known.
Yeah, he hurt her, and it is, as we say, an unforced error.
And what's astounding,
he should have waved and kept going.
And it was astounding that Trump jumped over. Of course, Hillary was a part of it. You know, Hillary was pulling her hair out of her. What is he doing?
Got on the plane, shouldn't have done it. All right. More after this on the political and legal implications of what the Attorney General has done in the last 24 hours. We'll break it down with NBC News' Andrea Mitchell just ahead.
I may have viewed it in a certain light, but the issue is how does it impact the work that I do and the work that the Department of Justice does. And I certainly wouldn't do it again. You know, because I think it has cast this shadow over what it should not, over what it will not touch.
That was the Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch, speaking at the Aspen Ideas Festival earlier today about that meeting with former President Bill Clinton. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. to talk more about this, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent, MSNBC anchor, and one of the best political reporters in the history of North America.
Universe.
Andrea Mitchell.
Andrea, universe, of course.
Do you agree with me that the Attorney General is trying to have it both ways? Act as if she's leaving this solely up to career people and the FBI, but at the same time reserving the right, if she wants to overrule it?
Actually, I am told, according to all of my reporting today, that she is saying she will not overrule them. She's taking herself out of it. And that she has to, really, because there is the appearance of impropriety here. There's the appearance that the case will be influenced improperly, even though everyone who knows her and has watched her over 2 terms as the prosecutor in Brooklyn says that she is absolutely impeccable in her integrity. But unfortunately, what happened on that plane has cast a shadow over it. And the people I've talked to who are, law professors and ethics experts say that it was highly inappropriate and really audacious of the president to have gotten on that plane.
All right, so Andrea, I know that there are people at the Justice Department saying that, and I know she suggested today, at times, she was fully out of it. But she also said today, we showed it earlier in the show, I fully expect to accept their recommendation. And a senior Justice Department official said to me today repeatedly, she reserves the right with a very, very low probability to overrule it.
They're saying that, I think, to give her a little bit of an out. I'm told definitively that she is not going to take part in this case. And that, in fact, even though she says that she can take part in decisions leading up to the final decision, that the final decision is the whole ballgame. It's whether or not you're going to indict. And that will be left to the career prosecutors, that she now knows in no uncertain terms she cannot overrule them if they recommend indictment. Now, that said, that was already going to be a very high threshold, right? Because the rule of thumb, the appropriate rule of thumb, according to their standards, is you don't indict anyone if you don't think you can convict.
Right.
And it would be a real stretch to get a jury in D.C. to convict Hillary Clinton on a case if she even were to be indicted, given how vigorous the argument would be in her defense that she didn't know or that it was not mishandling. I mean, they have to establish that they mishandled classified information. Not intent, by the way. Simply that they mishandled classified information.
Andrea, it's Donny. Even if Airplane Gate did not happen, weren't her hands theoretically tied? This is not a Petraeus situation. This is somebody who's running for president. And if Department of Justice comes forward and says, we are indicting her, she's not even in a position to overturn it because by definition, she's indicted at that point.
Right. I mean, it would be, first of all, if there is a recommendation to indict and she were to overrule it, do you think that would be a secret for 1 minute? James Comey would have resigned as FBI director. That's clear. And he is held in such high regard. Our colleague, Joe Scarborough, has been saying that for a while, and he's absolutely right. So I don't think she had any real option. And the unfortunate part, according to the legal experts, is that this is a career prosecutor herself. Until, she took this job, she was known as one of the best prosecutors in the business. And whatever wisdom or judgment that she has now cannot be used in this case.
Right. But of course, Andrea, she's not formally recusing herself. And so
Exactly.
while we all agree that really she's just accepting reality on two levels. One is this is standard procedure. And two is, as you just said, she couldn't possibly overrule a decision not to indict or it would leak and he'd quit. So I will say again, the standard thing would be for her to have not done anything. Her hand was forced by Bill Clinton, right? Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. So we'd love you to address what Donny and I were talking about, which is what is up with Bill Clinton?
Well, that's another whole story. I think that, look, he is the schmoozer in chief. I mean, this is a man who went up to Ted Cruz on a tarmac 2 months ago because he saw another protective detail, and the Secret Service details all talk amongst themselves. Obviously, they are going to be notified when someone else is arriving at the same location, people with guns, and that there's another, another detail.
It's like
I mean,
special club.
They've all worked together. Exactly. You know what these private strips are like. You know what the plane looked like. It was probably one of the blue and white Gulfstreams. The C-20s.
Right.
So it was clearly identifiable as someone of cabinet rank. And so he said, oh, she's coming, the detail. And so he waited for her and then got on board the plane.
And what do you think the Clinton campaign thinks about what happened this week?
Oh, my God. I mean, look at the facts. Monday, she's in Cincinnati. I was there. It was an incredible event. She's got Elizabeth Warren literally and figuratively embracing her. Next Tuesday, she's going to be possibly riding on Air Force One, I'm told. That's not quite decided, but riding with the President of the United States, possibly, and then going to a rally and then whatever other events they do in the critical state of North Carolina. Then on Friday, the man who wanted to run and has always been her sibling rival inside the administration is going to be embracing her in Scranton, his birthplace, in Pennsylvania, which we have just put in the battleground map at NBC into the toss-up now. It's no longer leaning Democratic. Pennsylvania is so important that Scranton is the heart of the gun-toting, Trump trade deal hating constituency. It's not Philadelphia. And so that is the best place that Joe Biden could be with her. And that's the place where her dad was born and where they had a family cabin on a lake when she was a child. I mean, it's the perfect week. If they could deal with Bernie Sanders, it might be completely perfect. But the Warren thing kind of obviates that problem to a certain degree. And now she's got this. And, the FBI is still hanging over her head.
Right. Andrea, I talked this morning, and you were disagreeing with me. My feeling is this is more of the same. As long as she's not indicted, this is part of a bigger narrative here that's baked into her. And by next week, this is old news. It's a complete non-event. But you disagree with that?
Well, I do think what I was trying to say is that there still is the character issue and the trust issue. And she wouldn't have been addressing it in Chicago last Monday, saying, I know some people don't trust me, if she didn't think it was still a problem and if she wasn't anticipating another round on the emails. And, Huma Abedin's deposition this week, the person closer to her than anyone other than the immediate family. So there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And she has to deal with that. And Donald Trump, at some point, is going to focus, and we expect, and he's going to do some damage.
Andrea, in the end, Loretta Lynch, again, I think is struggling with sort of the mentality of a career prosecutor, but dealing with the highest profile political moment I think she's probably ever dealt with in just sort of pure politics.
Absolutely.
Do you have any sense of the pace of the investigation now? There's all sorts of talk about when her interview is, about what they have left to do. It seems to me we're getting close enough to the convention and the debates that if they don't do something pretty quick, they're going to have to hold this over till after the election, which is obviously controversial in and of itself.
No, absolutely. You should know there is some reporting that FBI interview is this weekend at her home. Right. And that they're being very cagey about it. So I don't want to.
But are we past the deadline where, or when is the deadline where they can't do anything because it's too close to Election Day? I feel like we're there.
Well, I think that there's another argument for getting it out of the way. And if it's not to indict, even though it's going to cause a storm among those who think, guilty, 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 said Donald Trump today. I think in August they can do something. if it gets into September and October, it's too close to. I mean, remember what happened back with Cap Weinberger?
Yep.
And that whole issue in 1992, when on the weekend before the election, the special prosecutor went after Cap Weinberger for, on Iran-Contra and all of that.
Yep. Okay, Andrea Mitchell, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great holiday.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks, Andrea. Up next, Trump is in the home stretch of his sweepstakes search. We'll talk about where that stands and more right after this. Washington Post is reporting that Newt Gingrich and Governor Chris Christie are among the top running mate prospects for Donald Trump. Others, though, are under consideration. For instance, NBC News reported today that Governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, who is reportedly meeting with Trump this weekend, is also, quote, in play. So, Donny, if it's true, and my reporting matches this, that while some people in Trump world, including Trump, are drawn towards Christie and Gingrich, that others are strongly urging other options, including Pence. What does that say about the state of the search?
I think at the very least, Trump wants to kind of, throw a little nugget out there for the conservative base out there and say we're talking to him. Obviously this is Cruz's number 2 guy. I still think it comes back to Christie. The more I think about it is that, A, you double down. Instead of doing a brand extension, which a Pence would be or a Corker would be, go core brand and say, you know what, we're pugnacious, we're outsiders, we're in your face, we're going to fight. And it's the equivalent, as I've talked a lot about before, between when I worked on the Clinton campaign, Clinton Gore, 2 good-looking Southern guys. So you have one face of the brand. Secondarily, I think the real benefit from with a Christie, and not a Gingrich would be a devastating mistake, is he gets to be good cop. He got an attack dog, and now now Trump does not have to be in the mud all the time and can act more presidential and maybe act the way we're waiting for him to act. So the more I think about it, the more time goes by, I think Christie's the choice.
I've thought Christie for a while, but this has got the feel of McCain's search in 2008 in the following sense. The Post reported today that maybe they'd move the timetable up and announce it soon, next week, rather than the week after. And they're just now asking Mike Pence to be vetted and just now meeting with Mike Pence. Like, this stuff should all be done by now. And if they're expanding the search now, but the dynamic that is big that I've heard for 3 weeks now is Trump was fine with his small list, and people were saying to him, there's nobody on this list who you should pick. He was getting recommendations of Condi Rice and Nikki Haley and other people who were not being closely looked at. He needs somebody who's fully vetted, who he's enthusiastic about, who actually is qualified to be president. I think Mike Pence is a pretty good choice on a lot of levels, but he's just meeting with the guy.
Yeah. I think there's never been a less important choice for vice president. You're either voting for Donald Trump or you're not.
Got to pick somebody qualified. All right,
I'm
up
not saying
next.
he doesn't, but
yeah, if it's qualified,
it's Trump,
fine.
it's Trump.
Up next, we're going to do some more sweepstakes stuff with the Trump campaign. Also, some staff changes there that are kind of interesting. We're going to talk to some reporters on the Donald Trump beat from NBC and Bloomberg right after this.
Joining us now from D.C., Bloomberg senior political reporter Michael C. Bender. Michael, we're talking about the Veep stakes from inside the Trump camp. Well, there you are. How you doing? From inside the Trump camp, word coming that maybe the person that Trump really, really wants is Kasich because he thinks he can deliver Ohio. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been hearing for a while now. You mentioned Pence a little bit earlier, and it just doesn't ring right with what we've been hearing from the people around Trump now for a couple weeks. As you know, there's one person who's going to ultimately make that decision, and until he does, it's a lot of speculation. But from the folks that Trump has been talking to about this, he's had stars in his eyes over Kasich, which sort of sounds odd given their combative relationship on the trail, and particularly Kasich's reluctance to give any light, to give any indication that he'd even consider the position. But Kasich has the experience in Washington, which Trump has told us specifically is a quality, is the top quality he's looking for in a vice presidential candidate. And also high on Trump's list is Kasich's ability to bring votes in Ohio, a state that you know well, no Republicans won without. So until we hear differently, Kasich has been at the top of the list from what we're hearing.
Mike, it's funny because the earliest person I ever talked to people in Trump world about, well before he won the nomination, being on the ticket was Kasich. Trump was said to be very attracted to the notion for all the reasons you said. Given that, we're sort of come full circle now, is there any indication that Trump himself or any emissary has reached out to try to make the relationship solid enough to even put it in play?
Well, we understand that he's tried to go around and try to get into Kasich's world, but then shut down at every turn. And Kasich himself, as recently as about a week ago, is just refusing to even consider this publicly. Now, maybe that's something that even Trump is such a positions himself as such a keen negotiator. Maybe Trump is even more attracted to that as a negotiating tactic. But by all accounts, the Kasich people haven't given an inch on this yet.
Mike, I want to shift gears to the convention. You and I could probably fill up every night with who we think the Democrats are going to put up. And on the Republican side, other than the Trump kids, who are we going to see on stage there?
That is going to be a very good question. We know some of the entertainment around the Trump campaign or the Trump convention now. Bands like Journey, we reported earlier this week, are being brought in. And one of the interesting things with that is those bands, this entertainment is being used to draw donors, to try to bring donors into Cleveland. Maybe some folks reluctant to attend the convention are being dangled backstage passes and these types of things to gin up interest in the convention.
If they got to get Journey to gin up interest in the convention, they got problems.
Journey in Cleveland. That should draw a lot of people. Mike, less than a minute to go. Some staff departures today, not super senior level people, but people who the Trump campaign just hired. What's the dynamic where people are coming for a cup of coffee and then going in the campaign? Is that growing pains or a systemic problem?
Well, it depends on what your view of the Trump campaign here is. I mean, if it's something that's only going to begin after the convention, I'd call it a growing pain. But given that we're in a year into this now, it seems systemic. I mean, you mentioned earlier your questions about only being interested in Pence now. I mean, I think that aligns with some of the problems they're having on staff. I mean, some of the folks who have left recently and some of the folks who are there, we understand, have had trouble getting paid. Some lower level staffers, similar to the positions that were let go today, haven't heard from their superiors or who they believe are their direct reports in weeks, if not months. This is not good news for the Trump campaign, whether you believe this is a growing pain or not.
Mike Bender, really appreciate it. Thank you, man. When we come back, more reporters on the Veep stakes and the Supreme Court's big month. And, of course, if you're watching the nation's capital, you can now listen to us on radio at Bloomberg 99.1 FM. We will be right back.
Joining us now from Washington, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, and from Denver, traveling with Donald Trump and covering his speech from earlier today, NBC News correspondent Katy. Kelly, start with you and your scoop from earlier today on Mike Pence. Qualified on paper, worked on Capitol Hill, governor of his state, strong with conservatives. Why turn to Pence this late in the process, do you think?
Well, from what I have learned, that Pence was interested in having this conversation at a time when his own race to be reelected as governor is tight, that this could be something that also boosts him in the state of Indiana, because we know Donald Trump did so well in the primary there and really clinched the nomination in Indiana. And Pence was a little late to the endorsement game, but he has been on board. And so I've learned that he will be traveling to meet with Donald Trump. This will be a private meeting, a conversation. And Pence was very careful to say only yesterday, Thursday, that he had not spoken to the candidate since the primary had happened. So now that's going to change. His campaign does acknowledge that he accepted this invitation. They qualified it, saying this is one of those conversations with national leaders, but it certainly goes more deeply than that. I think Pence does offer Donald Trump sort of the keys to a few key constituencies. Social conservatives, he speaks their language, has credibility there. He knows his way around Capitol Hill and could be that kind of a liaison if he were to be the running mate and they were to win. So it's those kinds of things that help. He's also pretty good on camera, pretty comfortable in his message discipline, and could probably play the role of look strong, reassuring, but not get in the way in a very contentious campaign.
I agree with everything you said, but Katy, I don't know how much time you spent with Mike Pence, but I know you know him well enough to maybe weigh in on this, which is he doesn't seem to me like Donald Trump's kind of guy. It doesn't seem to me they're going to have a lot of chemistry based on personality. What do you think of that?
Well, he adds what he needs, which is he adds factors that would have people take him seriously in Washington. Yep. I'm sorry, they're doing a mic check behind me. It's getting in my ear. But he doesn't have the panache that, say, someone like Newt Gingrich or Chris Christie has. Those are characters and their personalities that Donald Trump tends to move closer towards. And that's why they have been so close to him so far on the campaign trail and have acted as advisors over and over again. So Mike Pence, while he adds legislative experience, he's got an ease on camera, he's got a discipline that Donald Trump desperately needs, and that would give him some credibility in Washington. He's not necessarily the type of character that normally gels with Donald Trump. We're going to see how their meeting goes over the weekend and whether they find some common ground and are able to move forward together. But Pence right now is certainly not high on the Donald Trump likability list, I guess. Is that a Donald Trump matchability?
I'm going to predict that they both come away from the meeting incredulous. Donny.
Incredulous. Yeah. Katy, what can we expect from our good friend Mr. Trump today? Are we going to see the very disciplined, prompter reading, possibly presidential Trump, or are we going to see him going off the rails on Bill Clinton's little journey on the airplane? What are we going to see today from Mr. Trump?
Well, we already saw him speak. He finished about a couple hours ago, hour and a half or so ago, here at the Western Conservative Summit. There were teleprompters there. He walked out and he said, "Oh, I'm starting to love teleprompters," but he did not use teleprompters. He was reading from notes and oftentimes began to ramble. You could see he wasn't quite as disciplined or concise as he has been when he's been reading from a teleprompter. He did go off a little bit on Bill Clinton meeting with Loretta Lynch. This is something that totally plays into Donald Trump's narrative that the Clintons are only in it for themselves and that they are doing shady backroom dealings. They're not in it for the American people, and they're trying to further their political influence. And when talking about the Lynch meeting, he said that they were just talking about golf and their grandkids. Then Donald Trump went on a bit of a tangent about how he loves his grandkids, but he could only talk about his grandkids for 10 seconds. So trying to sow the seeds of doubt in voters' minds that that's all that the two were actually talking about.
Kelly, go ahead.
Grandchild after he made those comments.
Yeah. Kelly, in the scheme of things, and you've covered some of these before, is it safe for Trump to be casting about for new options this close to the convention?
Well, I think one of the perhaps pluses for a figure like Mike Pence is maybe this is a signal to the social and Christian conservatives that Donald Trump understands that there is a gap there and that he needs to be attentive to the things they want to see happen. Part of what we've got to expect is that Trump is trying to bring people together and quiet some of that delegate soul searching before the convention. And so ultimately the pick will have to be someone he's comfortable with. And some of these names really aren't that new to us. I think there's a new urgency inside the campaign. Days are dwindling, and there are big steps, as you know. There's a vetting process that is behind the scenes, private, but intrusive and really time-consuming in terms of the legal team and those who willingly allow themselves to be vetted. And there's the chance for Trump to build these personal relationships if he needs to build on that with someone like Mike Pence, who he has met with privately before. But you've got to think that Trump wanted that endorsement before the Indiana primary, and he didn't get it. Are there some hard feelings lingering from that?
Right.
Maybe that's something we'll be able to measure out of this.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, my reporting from that meeting was that Trump left the meeting with an expectation that perhaps things wouldn't go the way they did. It's important to note Kellyanne Conway, who's a frequent guest on this program, is just announced today as an advisor to Donald Trump, someone Donald Trump trusts and likes quite a bit. She is a longtime advisor to Mike Pence. So to the extent the Trump high command is now discussing the relative merits of Pence, there's someone around the table who is a big, big supporter of Mike Pence, knows him well, and I think Donald Trump would trust Kellyanne's advice on that. Katy, I want you to weigh in on the personnel stuff going on. Donny and I talked a bit about it with Mike Bender. The departures today, is the massive hiring that they're doing, the people coming in, is this just just as what happens when you try to hire in a hurry, or is there some dysfunction there that is potentially a bigger problem?
One quick note, Kevin Kellum, who resigned today, was actually a former staffer of Newt Gingrich's. So there is some crossover in terms of Kellyanne Conway being with Pence and then Kellum being with Gingrich. And there's some questions about whether he might be going back to Gingrich. But sources tell us, NBC News, Ali Vitale and me, that there was more disagreement internally about how things were going. Many believe that once Corey Lewandowski left, that things would sort of even out within the campaign. It would become much more functional. That hasn't entirely happened so far. There does seem to be missing elements in the chain of command and missing elements in terms of clear directives on a day-to-day basis, and that's why you saw these resignations. Kevin Kellum only came onto this campaign officially about a week and a half ago, so this is a very quick departure. The campaign is trying to staff up, and they made those announcements today, including Kellyanne Conway. And I've spoken to the RNC, and the RNC says they are working to expand their staff, and they have been somewhat successful with it. But the Trump campaign is not like any other campaign, and it's not one that has an ease of leadership that you would see in what would be a traditional presidential campaign, somebody like Mitt Romney or President Obama or even Hillary Clinton's campaign. There is a certain element of unpredictability because the candidate himself is often very unpredictable, going against his advisors' wishes. So it's not entirely clear what the day-to-day can be inside the campaign, and that's what we are hearing certainly led to the resignation of Kevin Kellum. It's embarrassing, though, for the campaign for somebody to quit a week and a half after they started.
Katy, we keep hearing that Jared Kushner's son-in-law has a bigger and bigger role. Clearly, Jared Kushner is a real estate developer's son, has not run a campaign before, so one would expect we're going to see a lot more of this chaos. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. And I think Jared Kushner, while he is a very trusted advisor to Trump, because he's trusted because he's, of course, very close to Ivanka's husband, and the kids are advisors, and they're trying to get in as much as they can, get their opinions in and their influence in as much as they can. But they're not seasoned politicians. There are others who know more about the day-to-day process of campaigning. Paul Manafort is one of those people. But we've seen that Donald Trump is not entirely comfortable with Paul Manafort. In press conferences, he's thrown him under the bus, saying that Paul Manafort is misquoted when Manafort says things that are contrary to what Donald Trump would say. This is what Corey Lewandowski was so good at. He was very adamant about not contradicting his boss and saying his boss was the ultimate authority, whereas Paul Manafort will give interviews and say that he believes that Donald Trump will be backing off of the Muslim ban, or he says that if they picked a female vice presidential candidate, then it would be pandering. These are things that have gotten Manafort in trouble behind the scenes, and that is part of the reason why there is such unpredictability and dysfunction, in front of the scenes.
Okay, Katy Tur out in Denver, Kelly O'Donnell in Washington with her Pence scoop. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon, we hope. Turning now to the Supreme Court. Big opinions this week on some big cases involving such issues as abortion, affirmative action, gun rights, public corruption, and immigration, all just in the last few weeks. Here with us now to talk about the court sweeping overview, 80,000 feet, our Supreme Court reporter, Greg Storr. So, Greg, what are the big lessons about this current 4-4 divide, 5-3 divide that we see on this court missing a member?
Well, one of the lessons is that Anthony Kennedy is still in charge, at least in a significant portion of cases, in some of the biggest cases. He made the difference in the abortion case. He made the difference in the affirmative action case. And in both of those, there were some signals that he might go the other way based on what he had done in the past, particularly on affirmative action. He voted to uphold the University of Texas's admissions policy. He had never before voted to uphold a race-based program. That was, he frankly contradicted some things he had said before. Significant win, but it shows that at least for now, he still is a very, very important member of this court.
Greg, in the cases that are lining up for next session, if we don't see a justice confirmed anytime soon, what are the ones where there's going to be some implication to that?
Well, they're really trying to avoid cases like that. If I told you what the best case is next term, you might start yawning. It's really not a very exciting term so far. That said, very often what the court does is it adds its best cases later in the term. So we may well see, for example, the Clean Power Plan. The court could take that up. There are certainly plenty of voting issues out there that the court could take up. And you could see a divided court, and it could make a huge difference as to whether Merrick Garland is confirmed as the next justice or whether somebody else joins the court.
Mark, you were surprised that neither candidate, and Greg, I'll throw this to you, that neither candidate has made more of an issue. Look, the real legacy is three Supreme Court justices, and for a generation, we're going to either have a liberal court or a conservative court. And to me, to galvanize either base, if I'm Hillary Clinton or if I'm Donald Trump, I'm hitting that, and that does not seem to be coming up in as major way as you would think it would.
They talk about it, but the reality is Trump did himself a world of good with that list of model nominees.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting how little they both talked about the abortion case. But the fact of the matter is, although it's easy to think voters will latch onto this, for the most part, voters who care about the court already care about it. And most voters it's a little bit too abstract. Greg Storr, thank you as always. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Coming up, All Due Reflect. Donny and I look back on the week that was in politics after this. Welcome back. It was another newsy week, and end of every week, John and I like to give our takes on the big political events in the presidential race. This week, though, John's not here, so advertising guru Donny Deutsch is joining me to give our two takes on the big events of the week. We're going to start on Monday, when Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, joined Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail. It was a big boost for Clinton and for Warren. A lot of deep stakes talk came up, and there was a lot of speculation that Clinton could use Warren to help bring in the populist left wing of the Democratic Party. Donny?
That's great, Mark, but Fox News actually got this right. They had the story.
Did you see the matching pantsuits? There they are.
Mrs. Clinton in matching blue stands right next to her. Look at that. They look ludicrous.
It's a pantsuit extravaganza.
And they have the same hair and all that kind of stuff.
On Tuesday, House Republicans released their long-awaited investigation into the events surrounding the horrible attack on an American compound in Benghazi, Libya. That was a report that Republicans had been wanting to use to try to make a dent in Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and against the Obama administration. In the end, there was more damaging information probably about the administration at large than about Hillary Clinton. Donny?
Look, this Benghazi stuff is confusing enough, but Trey Gowdy could not get off one word.
Read the report. Read the report, and if you do read the report, this report, if you at the end of reading that report, if you read the report, I don't think you'll see any of that in the report. Is it in the report? Your takeaway from the report. I stand on our report. Read the report, how you read the report, what story you do on the report. The report, you read the report, you will not see any of those quotes in the report.
Dude, I got it. There's a report. It's a report. We got it. I got report cards. I know what the word report means.
Thanks, Donny. On Wednesday, the big event was a leaders summit in Canada. The heads of the governments of Canada, Mexico, and the United States all joined together. It was a big symbolic event at a time when Donald Trump and others are talking about erecting walls around countries and tightening borders. These three leaders talked about the importance of countries getting together. Donny?
I mean, that's all fine and good, but did you guys see the Three Stooges handshake thing? Woo, 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 woo. Look, guys, just plan the handshake. It doesn't take much. Just go, you go high, I'll go low. I mean, this is embarrassing.
Thanks, Donny. On Thursday, the big event was Donald Trump in New Hampshire talking about manufacturing. He gave a major speech that a lot of people saw as one of the first times the Trump campaign acted like a real presidential campaign. Trump using a prepared text reinforced by his campaign with press releases, trying to put Democrats on the defensive on things like manufacturing, jobs, and wages. This is an issue that a lot of Republicans hope Trump can drive effectively against Hillary Clinton in the fall. Donny?
This one kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Get rid of all these heebie-jobbies they wear at TSA. I've seen them myself.
I understand.
We need the veterans back in there to take it. They've fought for this country and defended it. They'll still do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, and we are looking at that.
Donald, if you become president, you have to call people out when they say stupid stuff, even yourself.
Great analysis as usual, Donny.
And Mark, that's what I think. And everything goes better with Captain Crunch.
Thanks a lot for filling in. That's our analysis of the week that was. and we'll be right back. On ye old BloombergPolitics.com, you can check out John McCormick's great piece on where Hillary Clinton's campaign is spending the bulk of its TV ad dollars. Coming up here on Bloomberg TV, DocuSign CEO Keith Krach. That's on Bloomberg West. Happy 4th of July. Thanks to Donny for joining in. Go hit the pool. Until next week, we'll see you on Tuesday. Sayonara.